The art of a swerve is traditionally hard to pull off in WWE. The swerve relates to when there's a twist in a storyline which the audience isn't supposed to see coming. However, due to the nature of WWE storytelling, most of the time these reveals are predicted way in advance. Nevertheless, sometimes WWE manages to execute the perfect swerve. Nobody predicts what's coming, and in turn, WWE creates meaningful and compelling television. But which times were they? Well, join us now as Wrestlelamia looks at 10 WWE swerves nobody saw coming. Be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell for daily wrestling videos, and follow us on Facebook for exclusive lists. Also check out Wrestlelamia.co.uk and a non-wrestling channel, Incredible. Number 10. The Corporate Champion. By the summer of 1998, The Rock had firmly cemented himself as a fan favourite. He was getting thunderous reactions from the audience, and he was without a doubt the number 2 babyface in the company, just behind Stone Cold Steve Austin. Heading into the Survivor Series pay-per-view and the Deadly Games tournament, The Rock was one of the favourites heading into the event, but nobody could see what was coming. In the main event and tournament finals, The Rock took on Mankind, and WWE decided to replicate the Montreal Screwjob from the year prior. As The Rock placed Mankind in the sharpshooter, McMahon called for the bell and The Rock won his first WWE title. The Rock then proceeded to become the villainous corporate champion, and this was a role which in turn actually made him even more popular, and this corporate champion era would only last around 6 months before The Rock would return to his role as the People's Champion. Number 9. Stephanie sides with Triple H. Now, the dominant storyline on WWE television in late 1999 was the storyline between Triple H and the McMahon family. To get under Vince McMahon's skin, Triple H had seemingly drugged Stephanie, and the two had got married at a drive-in service in Las Vegas. McMahon decided to challenge Triple H to a no-holds-barred match at the Armageddon pay-per-view, and to the shock of everyone, Stephanie actually sided with Triple H. During the closing stages of the match, Stephanie refused to use a sledgehammer on the game, and this allowed Triple H to use his signature weapon on McMahon for the victory. Following the game's victory, he and Stephanie embraced, revealing that it was their plan all along, and the two wanted to take over the entire WWE. Number 8. Eric Bischoff becomes Raw GM. On July 15th, 2002 edition of Monday Night Raw, Vince McMahon would announce the brand new Raw General Manager. At the time, fans didn't know what to expect, as there were rumors of Shane or even Mick Foley taking on the role. But to everyone's surprise, out came Eric Bischoff. This truly stunned fans, as the man who tried to put WWE out of business with WCW was now running the WWE's flagship show. This was a genius move, and according to Bischoff, even talent in the locker room didn't know it was going to take place. It was masterfully executed, and Bischoff would shine in the role, becoming the longest tenured Raw GM in company history. Number 7. Triple H turns on Seth Rollins. Following the inaugural Universal Champion Finn Balor going down with an injury, WWE were forced to change booking plans for Raw's new world title. They would book a fatal 4-way between Seth Rollins, Kevin Owens, Cass, and Roman Reigns, and fans expected either Rollins or Reigns to win the title. During the closing moments of the match, Rollins' mentor Triple H entered the ring, and he proceeded to turn on Rollins by performing a pedigree on him. This allowed Owens to capitalize and win the Universal title. The decision to have Triple H turn on Rollins was a move that nobody could have ever predicted. It was a smart move, as it allowed WWE to tell some brand new exciting stories that had never been told before. Number 6. Daniel Bryan says no. World title changes on Raw and SmackDown are rare, but they do happen. When WWE decided to have Daniel Bryan win the title on SmackDown in 2018, it changed the landscape of the Blue brand indefinitely. By November 2018, Bryan was still popular, and he could easily have kept doing the yes gimmick for the rest of his days, but WWE decided to turn him heel. During his title showdown with AJ Styles, Bryan would cheat to win the title in a move that nobody saw coming. Bryan turning to the dark side was unthinkable, and it was a swerve that really helped elevate Bryan's WWE run. Following the title win, Bryan would debut a brand new character. This character would belittle fans for destroying the earth, and he would even debut a brand new WWE title made completely from sustainable materials. This new character was bold and innovative, and some fans consider it as some of the finest work of Daniel Bryan's career. Number 5. The Heist of the Century. The main event of WrestleMania 31 featured Royal Rumble winner Roman Reigns taking on Brock Lesnar. The match was expected to act as the ascension of Reigns to the top of the ladder, but WWE managed to execute one of the most appreciated swerves. As both Reigns and Lesnar were down during the match, Seth Rollins ran into the ring and cashed in the Money in the Bank briefcase. Rollins would then perform a curb stomp on Reigns to win the title. Whilst his plan may have seemed obvious in hindsight, at the time it seemed rather unlikely that WWE would have Rollins cash in during the main event of Wrestlemania. It was a great moment and a fantastic and fan-satisfying close to an acclaimed WrestleMania event. Number 4. The Authority is Born. A SummerSlam in 2013 was headlined by John Cena taking on Daniel Bryan for the WWE title. Bryan would defeat Cena in a passing of the torch moment, but Bryan's moment in the sun would quickly fade. Mr. Money in the Bank Randy Orton would come down to the ringside as Bryan was celebrating, and this is when special guest referee Triple H performed a pedigree on Bryan. Triple H had turned heel, and this allowed Orton to cash in and win the WWE title. This was a smart move on WWE's part, as with Bryan now the default top babyface in the WWE, they needed to create a credible and legitimate foe for Bryan to overcome. Following Orton's win, the Authority would be born, and this would be a stable similar to the McMahon-Helmsley faction, and they would dominate WWE television for the next few years. Number 3. The American Badass arrives. When vignettes started airing in 2000 promoting the return of The Undertaker, fans assumed that The Undertaker would be returning as the Phenom. The only indication that a character shift may be taking place was that some of the vignettes had a Kid Rock track playing in them, but other than that, there was no reason to believe that the American Badass was about to be born. The American Badass would debut at the Judgment Day pay-per-view, and he would interfere in the Iron Man match between The Rock and Triple H and cleared house. Taker came out on a motorcycle, and his presentation and look was more in line with Mark Calloway rather than The Undertaker. This in theory shouldn't have worked, but it did, and it allowed The Undertaker to remain fresh and more importantly relevant. Taker would discuss why he made the decision to make the character shift during an appearance on the True Geordie podcast, and this is what the Hall of Famer had to say. What was going on was the Attitude Era. You know, you've got Stone Cold who's cutting these incredible promos that people can really identify with, right? I mean, it's like a real life with a little bit of gas behind it. You got The Rock cutting these unbelievable promos. All these promos they are so good. I think I would have survived, but I wouldn't have thrived if I wouldn't have taken a break and took, as good as the character is, you're kinda boxed in too. What you can do and what you can't do. You know, it's hard for The Undertaker to be in the ring while The Rock is talking about poontang pie, you know what I mean? And that had some type of retort that The Undertaker could give. So it was a period for me to just take a deep breath and do something different for a minute. Number 2, Mark Henry has a lot left in the tank. On June 17, 2013, it was announced that Mark Henry would be retiring on Raw that same evening. Whilst this announcement seemed rather out of the blue, Henry had a documented history of injuries, so retirement wasn't out of the question. Henry would come down to the ring whilst John Cena was cutting a promo, and he would proceed to cut the best promo of his entire career. Henry's retirement promo was full of heart and humour, but it was all a ruse. Henry finished off his promo by delivering a world's strongest slam to Cena, and he would state that he had a lot left in the tank, and he was going to win the WWE title. This type of segment is extremely hard to pull off, but the nature of Henry's promo managed to convince even the smartest of wrestling fans that he was hanging up his boots. And number 1, Stone Cold sides with the devil. Stone Cold Steve Austin is arguably the biggest star in WWE history, and during the Attitude Era, the idea of turning him heel appeared to be out of the question. However, at WrestleMania 17, they made the bold decision to align Austin with his arch-nemesis, Mr. McMahon. Austin will be wrestling The Rock in the main event, and this is when McMahon would help Austin capture the title. Fans were speechless as to what had unfolded, as going into the match, it was impossible to see this swerve coming. Austin would discuss the swerve and the decision to turn him heel during an appearance on the Talk is Jericho podcast, and this is what the former champion had to say. Worst call I've ever made other than refusing the job to Brock Lesnar at Atlanta. But you know, that was my idea. Vince always likes to do something big at WrestleMania. He didn't have anything big planned, so me being the rocket scientist that I am, I figured, okay, you're a hot babyface, and if you turn heel, you're a hot ass heel to draw money like that, or vice versa. By and large, this is true for most part if the time is right to turn. Well, clearly the time wasn't right for me to turn. But there you have it, folks, 10 WWE swerves nobody saw coming. Be sure to leave your comments down below, and I'll see you next time with some more wrestling content.